Millie. Come on, Millie. Okay, this is serious. We've lost Millie.
But if the current was really bad, it would take her, but of course we don't know what time it might have been and what the current would have been doing.
Millie's definitely missing. She's not on the boat. Oh, that was a quick intro.
There's going to be some changes around here.
In the last episode I was solo sailing and we promised that we would show you how I go about sailing Esper. Unfortunately, when I sat down to edit the video this week and look back on those clips that I recorded, all I got was... So we've re-recorded the clip which we did earlier this week. Here is how I sail Esper on my own. This is how we prepare the boat before we go sailing. So first things we do is we turn on a few electronic items. Most importantly, we're going to turn on the VHF, the instruments and the autopilot. I've also got radar and AIS, so depending on my mood I'll turn those two on as well. Then since we've got the instruments on, we can turn on the chart plotter, which is down here. This is the touchscreen chart plotter. Now this is the master plotter that drives the slave plotter up in the cockpit, and they share the same chart data. Once that's on, I check that the VHF is on. Now if I'm doing a dual watch, so if I'm chatting to someone, I might have it on say 08, but also monitoring 16 as well. So I'll drop it down to 08 and then press the dual button, and that now means that we're now listening to the two channels. We're ready to start the engine. So next thing, I turn this dial to 1. Right, little explanation. Changeover switch. That's this thing here. It allows us to decide which battery we use to start the engine. So what we do is we turn the switch to 1 and that uses the engine battery. If the engine battery doesn't work, and sometimes it doesn't because it hasn't charged up properly, then the switch allows us to change over to the domestic or the house batteries. So we turn the dial to number 2. Like that. Sometimes that doesn't work either, and so we have to parallel the house battery and the domestic battery, and so the switch allows us to turn to all and that'll parallel them all. If the engine doesn't start when you parallel all those, then well, you're fucked. You start the engine. Also, when do you turn the engine on? Before you weigh anchor or after you weigh anchor? Of course, the purists out there wouldn't turn the engine on at all because they wouldn't have an engine because they sail everywhere. But actually, we like to turn the engine on before we do anything else because if nothing else, it charges the batteries. Now that the engine's running, I then turn the selector switch to number 2. And write an entry in the logbook. Logbook. In this, we keep a record of what we do on the boat, and the main reason for this is in case of emergency. If the electrics go down and you've got no GPS signal, for example, then you have a record, ideally every hour or once every 3 hours or whenever you change course, of where your last location was. So if everything goes tits up, then you have a reference. Other things we record in the logbook: the time that we weigh anchor, the course ordered, the course steered, wind strength, wind's direction, sea state, visibility, barometric pressure, and also any other notes like if you saw a mermaid or maybe an unidentified sea creature. Okay, so instruments are on, so I make sure that my 2 repeaters here show depth and wind. Always a good idea to keep it on depth when you're leaving anchorages. The last bit of electronic item I switch on is the chart plotter by the binnacle. I reckon it's time to get some sails out. Right, stop, wait. Do we weigh anchor before we set the sails or after? Since you're at anchor, and in theory you're probably pointing into wind to get the mainsail and the mizzen sail out, that's the best time to get them out, is when you're pointing into wind. One theory is that you get your sails out before you weigh anchor. The problem with that is that if you get your mainsail out and you get sudden side gusts, it becomes a bit unmanageable and it actually becomes quite difficult to weigh the chain as it gets caught up over the bow roller. Anyway, in this example, we decide to weigh anchor first. This is a line that has some elasticity. So in bad weather, when the chain is pulling as the boat bounces up and down, this has a hook on it which alleviates the strain from the chain and puts it on the rope instead. It just acts as a kind of spring. But the next thing I have to do is to take that first bit up so I can get the hook off. Right, mizzen. I tend to start with the mizzen because it's the easiest sail to cope with, so yeah, let's get it out. Before we go any further, let's look at Esper's rig. And before we do that, let's look at some common sailing rigs. Bermudan sloop, Bermudan cutter, Bermudan cat, standard cat, Chinese junk, gaff cutter, and finally the ketch. This is what Esper is. She's a ketch cutter, which basically means she has two pointy stick things, and the one in the forward of the boat is taller than the one at the back. She has four sails. We've got the mizzen, the main, and then we've got the staysail, which is known as the cutter sail, and then the foresail. By the way, if the mizzen is behind the rudder here, then it's known as a yawl, not a ketch. In a moment you're going to see me play with a number of lines, starting with the mizzen. The mizzen and the main have exactly the same lines. So we have the mast here, and this is the sail, and then we have the topping lift here, the kicking strap, and then the furling line. Esper has in-mast furling, not fully battened sails, and there are pros and cons to this, which we can discuss at great length. If you like, you can leave some comments below as to how much you hate in-mast furling. Gotta say, I love the setup. We'll talk more about this in the next episode when we discuss what makes a good livable boat. Really easy, the mizzen. This is the mizzen sheet, and this one allows the boom to swing sideways. So I'll just prepare this, have it ready. I don't let it off though, I like to try and keep it straight. This is the outhaul. So this is the car that runs across the top of the boom that pulls the bottom of the sail out. And it's quite simple because it's in-mast furling. So it's literally a furling line. So there's a little key in here which stops the spindle from spinning. So I pull the key out, turn it, and this is it. It's so easy. And I just like to keep one turn on the axle there just to stop the thing from moving around when we're in wind. So I lock this off so it doesn't spin around anymore, like so, and then tighten up the outhaul. Other thing is, keep your lines tidy. There's nothing worse than a messy boat, so try to keep these as tidy as possible. Okay, now that the sail is out, we let off the topping lift. The topping lift is the thing that holds the end of the boom up. So the idea is that as we drop the topping lift, it pulls the sail down, like so. And then the last thing we do is we pull the kicking strap. And the kicking strap is the line that runs from the middle of the boom down to the base of the mast, and this helps pull the boom down. So we just give it a quick tug like that, and that's the mizzen set. Just before we do the main, this is the main sheet, and I like to have this undone and ready to let the main sheet, the main sail out, just in case when we get it out and we get some wind from the side, we can let it off quickly. The main sail works in pretty much the same way as the mizzen. If all of this sailing terminology is rather confusing, then get yourself a dictionary, and specifically get yourself this one, the Sailing Dictionary, which is a comprehensive reference book of modern sailing terms, published by Adlard Coles, except it is no longer published by Adlard Coles because I think this is out of print. I actually bought this copy 15 years ago on eBay, second hand, for £30 sterling, shipped from the States. If you can get hold of a copy of this, beg, borrow, steal, fight, burgle, whatever, get a copy of this, because it has every single sailing term you could ever imagine and then some. I should be able to do this from the cockpit, and well, I can do it from the cockpit, but it's actually easier and quicker to do it from the mast. So let's go up to the mast and I'll show you how it works. Now normally Liz is at the other end and she's pulling in the out haul, but I'm on my own, so I'm going to run back to the cockpit and pull out the excess line of the out haul. Okay, and then just do a couple of turns around the winch and we'll just tighten it off. Since we're starting from the back of the boat and working our way forward, I guess the next sail we should do is the staysail. So that is the inner foresail. So this is called a cutter rig. A cutter rig means that you've got an additional foresail here, and it's often referred to as the inner staysail since it runs up the inner stay, which is the middle cable here that keeps the big pointy stick thing upright. So we only use it when we're sailing into wind, and it helps divide the wind up into manageable slots. It's also useful in storms because we can use it as a storm jib. First thing we have to do is let off the sheets. So this is the sheet for the staysail. There's one other side, and we need to let them both off. The wind at the moment is coming over the starboard side, so we're actually going to be pulling the sheet to unfurl the staysail on the port side. So what I'll do is I'll let it off and I'll just leave one turn, and then always keep the lines inside the cockpit because the engine's on and we don't want to let the lines fall over the side and wrap around the prop. Okay, this is the actual furling line for the staysail. So this runs down the side of the boat and it goes to the drum on the bottom of the staysail. And all we do to let it off, this is the jammer. So we just undo this jammer, and when we're ready, we pull this sail out and that should unfurl. Staysail's really easy, so we don't even need a winch. I can actually pull it in tight enough normally. Occasionally I'll winch it, but we don't have too much wind, so we should be okay. And then all we have to do then is just lock off the furling line of the jammer. I do this on all the lines just in case there's an emergency and we have to quickly furl it away. That's ready to be furled away. And like before, keeping the lines tidy. 3 down, 1 to go. So now we've got the head sail, and on Esper it's called a Yankee. Yankee, jib, genoa, there are many different types of head sail. They vary in shape and size, and they're often referred to in percentages, which basically means the percentage of the sail that comes behind the main mast. 150% genoa, for example, is massive, and it comes all the way back. If you imagine this is the mast here, it would come all the way back here, and that's used in very light winds. The Yankee, on the other hand, as you can see, is very high cut and it only comes back to the mast. Now for us this isn't so much of a problem because we have 4 sails to play with, but there are times when I wish that our Yankee wasn't a Yankee and it was, I don't know, 120% genoa. Still, she's easy to manage and I don't like the cut of your jib. Anyway, it works in the same way as the staysail, and so we have 2 sheets, one on the port side, one on the starboard side, and then we have a furling line which wraps around that drum. Works in the same way. So again, we're going to keep a couple of wraps on the drum for when we furl it out, and the rest of the line we'll keep inside the cockpit. Furling line for the head sail works in the same way as the mizzen. It goes down to the bottom of the sail on the drum. So we let off the jammer, and to furl it, since the wind's coming from that side, we now have to go over to the port side and pull on the head sail sheet. We're sailing.
questions.
Questions. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about how to choose the perfect liveaboard boat. Spoiler alert, there is no such thing as perfect. But in this episode, we thought we'd have a look at some of the more miscellaneous questions we've received on YouTube.
The Stimpy. What has been your favourite place to live on the hook at? Thailand?
Yeah, I think Thailand takes some beating. It's got everything, hasn't it? It's got the food, the landscape, people. It's also got the wind as well for the sailing. I mean, what more could you want?
But not just Thailand. It's very difficult to choose one country above any other because they are all so very different. We started in Turkey and it still remains one of our favourite places in the world to sail.
The Red Sea, of course, especially the southern Red Sea. That's pretty special.
Yeah, there's one particular place in Eritrea that we will never forget.
And we left a little piece of our heart in India as well.
And who wouldn't love the Maldives? We spent 3 months there. Vincent Richard, our latest Patreon. How would anyone go about and get invited on Esper?
Well, Vincent, you've done the right thing. Anyone who's a Patreon is up for the chance to win a trip with us on Esper. So when we reach a certain target, a certain goal on Patreon, everyone who's a Patreon at that point is going to be in with this chance. So if anyone else out there is interested in coming and sailing aboard Esper, then please sign up to Patreon.
And if you happen to be in the area, give us a shout, let us know you're around, and we would love to hook up with you for a beer. We've done that with quite a few people from Patreon, YouTube and Facebook. Peter Eriksson, or Peter Eriksson, what kind of licences or certificates do you hold that let you clear in and out of countries easily? VHF, ICC, others. Do you hold tourist visas?
We do have a number of certificates. So we do have our VHF certificate and we do have our ICC. We also have our competent crew, day skipper, yachtmaster theory and so on. But none of these are really required to enter into a country apart from, I think, France, where they uphold the ICC.
We've never been asked to show any certificates in any country that we've visited.
So I've got my swimming proficiency, my cycling proficiency.
I've got grade 1 piano.
I've got grade 5 piano.
I won a skipping competition.
No, but seriously, with regards to visas, every country is different. In Thailand, for example, if you want a 3-month visa, you have to apply outside of Thailand at a Thai embassy. If you don't have a visa, you can still enter the country, but depending on how you come in, you might get a 14-day visa or a 30-day visa. But every country is different, and it's really just a case of staying abreast of the changes that happen, and they do change regularly.
And of course, it depends what passport you hold. It might be quite different to your situation, maybe very different to ours. At the moment, we can go anywhere we like in the Mediterranean because it's Europe, but in 2 years' time, they won't want us and we'll have to get visas, so we'll see what happens.
This one from my favourite YouTube username, McDope Bada Bing, Bada Bing, Bada Bing. Could you share with us your top 10 failures and top 10 triumphs of your life aboard? Rescuing turtles in the Indian Ocean.
Getting through the whole of the Red Sea without seeing a pirate. Catching my very first tuna.
Learning basic Turkish.
Discovering completely untouched anchorages along the western coast of the Red Sea, which was mind-blowing.
Failures, too many to mention. Let's get the obvious out of the way. The engine and the gearbox. We had big gearbox problems when we were in Turkey. And in Thailand, we have had untold number of issues with the engine, which you all know about.
When the autopilot failed at the north end of the Red Sea, we had to get all the way to India, hand steering, and that was a bit of a pain.
Following on from that, when we left the Maldives to cross the Indian Ocean to Malaysia, we lost our auxiliary rudder off our wind pilot, and since we didn't have an electronic autopilot system, we had to hand steer for 12 days in the southwest monsoon, and that wasn't fun.
On the other hand, it was a real achievement getting across, just the two of us, by hand, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. We both lost a lot of weight and we learned to trust each other. Ed G sent us a book of questions and we're going to take each section and answer a couple of those sections now. Round 1, ocean sailing. Do you have a satellite phone?
Yes.
What is your game plan if you run into trouble in the middle of the ocean?
Quietly panic.
How far or how long will you motor your boat when there is a period of no wind in the ocean?
About a day.
What type of medical equipment do you have on board and what's in your first aid kit?
Plasters, Savlon,
Suture kits,
headache tablets.
usual. Do both of you know what to do when there's a man overboard? What if this accident happens at night or when one of you is asleep or down in the cabin?
Well, if someone goes overboard and you're asleep in the cabin, you're not going to know about it. If it's night time and it's in rough seas in an ocean, 2 hours is going to make a lot of difference. You turn around and retrace your steps. But the key thing really is to not fall overboard. And so at night time, if you're on your own, you clip yourself in and you stay inside the cockpit.
What do you do with all the trash you generate?
We throw it away. No, but seriously, no, we do throw it away. If it's biodegradable, like foodstuffs, they go overboard. But anything else, we tie up in plastic bags, put them in the dinghy, and wait until we can find somewhere where we can dispose of them responsibly.
Rob Bradley would love to see a vlog on your video setup, including cameras, software, etc, etc.
Okay, Rob, I'm glad you asked me this because you're not the only person that's asked about this particular video. A lot of people want to know what kind of video equipment we use, and I have already put it together in my head. I'm very keen to do this myself, so I think it will be of great interest to people to sit down one day and talk through all the different pieces of equipment we use to make these kind of clips. I promise that I will do it sometime soon. Ed G, round 2. Money. How do you handle money when sailing to rural islands? I'm sure they don't have an ATM machine there.
You'd be surprised how many islands do have an ATM machine, and we use it when they do, and if they don't, we hope we have enough cash with us.
Talking of which, how much cash do you carry on board?
Sometimes we have loads, sometimes we have none.
Normally none. How do you replenish your United States dollars? I'm assuming you carry USD as it's accepted by most money changers around the world.
We don't carry US dollars. We use ATMs where we find them, and we use local currency. This from Sailing Kakik, Saki, Kasik, I don't know how to pronounce it. With more and more boats cruising, do you ever have difficulties finding a place to anchor? Rob Bradley, current episode to real time.
Yes, this is a good point. We realised that our sailing vlog and many other sailing vlogs out there are way behind in terms of what they're putting up on YouTube versus what they're actually recording, sometimes many months and sometimes up to a year behind. This is something we are trying to address from this episode onwards.
Yep.
So we are going to continue to show you what I got up to last year, and we're going to try and catch up with that very quickly, but at the same time we're going to show you what we're doing right here, right now.
You can also find out what we're doing all the time by checking in with Facebook and Instagram.
Don't forget, if you do like these videos and you feel that you are getting something out of them, then please consider becoming a Patreon. You can do so for as little as $2 a month, which is less than what you probably pay for a coffee in a day. And don't forget, the Patreon money that we receive doesn't go to fund our lifestyle. It goes towards making these videos, which we're trying to make more educational, more fun, and more entertaining. So, if you do like it, please consider becoming a Patreon. It was light, and the last I saw Millie, she was on top of the cupboard when I woke up to turn over in bed at 5 this morning. I thought it's strange that we couldn't hear any noise. She normally makes lots of noise, 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, it's breakfast time. So thinking she was up on deck on her little throne, couldn't find her anyway. It very quickly became apparent that she wasn't on the boat. Well, we jumped in the dinghy and we've basically done a circuit of this bay, which as you can see is not particularly small. We went as far as those ferries, down past that blue boat there, beyond there to that blue boat there, and over to that catamaran over there. Very difficult to know what to do because you've got tidal influence, tides moving backwards and forwards, the wind's moving, and of course night time it's a bit calmer, but give it another hour or so and the ferries and the longtails and the tripper boats will be charging up and down here. But it just so happened that we went over to a boat which, as it turns out, is more than halfway to the shore, and that is probably, I don't know, it's probably a kilometre, and we were at one of those boats there and turned round and just happened to see Millie swimming straight at us.
How long have you been swimming for? Look at you. Oh, it's all right. We need to get this horrid salt water off.
Here.
Come on, Boo.
Good girl. You're not going to like this.
You're safe again, Pete. Yeah, you're safe.
Poor little thing.
Actually, I was convinced she's dead. I don't know, I'm probably going to cry. Because I was so upset, I really thought she was dead. And she hasn't fallen off for years, and she knows the drill, and she's supposed to climb back on, and I just thought something, you know, I didn't think we'd ever see her again. And we've been to quite a few boats and nearby boats, and quite a few people have cats. And they've been very sympathetic and very sweet. They've all said they'll look for her, so we should let them know we found her at the end.